The kitchen clock ticked louder than it ever had, each second slicing through the silence like a blade. Ethan's hands trembled as he set the coffee mug down. His wife Sarah's eyes locked on him, waiting for words he'd rehearsed 1,000 times but still couldn't shape. He'd loved her for 15 years. But tonight, he'd unravel the lie he'd lived for just as long. "I'm gay, Sarah," he said, voice cracking under the weight of truth. Her face froze, a flicker of confusion giving way to a storm of hurt. The air between them thickened, heavy with the life they'd built, 2 kids, a mortgage, a photo on the fridge from their honeymoon in Maine. She didn't scream or cry. Not yet. Instead, she leaned back, her chair creaking, and whispered, "How long have you known?" Ethan's throat tightened. "Always," he admitted, hating how the word landed like a betrayal. He'd buried it deep, beneath years of Little League games, anniversary dinners, and quiet nights watching TV with Sarah's head on his shoulder. He'd convinced himself he could be the husband she deserved, the father their kids, Mia and Lucas, needed. But the truth clawed its way out, refusing to stay buried any longer. Sarah's gaze dropped to her hands, fingers twisting the wedding band she hadn't removed in a decade. "Why now?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Because of Alex," Ethan thought but didn't say. Alex, the barista at the coffee shop downtown, whose laugh had stirred something Ethan had suppressed since high school. They'd only talked brief, fleeting moments over Lats, but those conversations cracked open a door Ethan had bolted shut. He didn't love Alex. Not yet. But he loved the version of himself he glimpsed in those moments, unashamed, alive. "I couldn't keep lying to you," Ethan said instead. "You deserve better. The kids deserve better." Sarah's eyes snapped up, sharp with pain. "Better? You think this is better? Telling me our life was a lie?" "It wasn't a lie," he said, desperate. "I love you, Sarah. I love our family. But I've been hiding who I am, and it's killing me." She stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the hardwood. "I need time," she said, walking out of the kitchen, leaving Ethan alone with the ticking clock and the weight of his confession. The next morning, Sarah was already at the stove when Ethan woke, flipping pancakes for Mia and Lucas. The kids, oblivious to the fracture in their world, babbled about school and soccer. Ethan watched Sarah's mechanical movements, her smile tight as she poured syrup. He wanted to reach for her, to bridge the chasm he'd created, but he didn't know how. They didn't speak about it for days. Ethan slept on the couch, the living room a temporary exile. He spent hours Googling co-parenting arrangements, reading stories of couples who'd navigated this divorce without destruction, love reshaped into something new. He clung to the idea that they could still be a family, just different. On the 5th night, Sarah called him into the kitchen again. Her eyes were red, but her voice was steady. "I don't hate you," she said. "I'm angry, and I'm hurt, but I don't hate you. I want to figure this out for the kids." Ethan exhaled, relief flooding him. "Co-parenting," he said. "We can make it work. We'll stay partners in this. For them." Sarah nodded, but her expression was guarded. "I need you to be honest from now on. No more secrets." "I promise," he said, meaning it. They started mapping out a plan: shared custody, alternating weekends, therapy for the kids. It was clinical, almost businesslike. But beneath it, Ethan felt a flicker of hope. They could rebuild, not as husband and wife, but as parents, as allies. But then the phone rang. Ethan's mother, Margaret, her voice sharp through the receiver. "I'm coming to visit next week," she said, no warmth in her tone. "We need to talk about what you're doing to this family." Ethan's stomach sank. Margaret had always been a force devout, unyielding, the kind of woman who saw the world in black and white. He hadn't told her yet, but he knew she'd heard whispers from relatives. Her visit wasn't about support. It was a reckoning. As he hung up, Sarah touched his arm, a rare gesture since that night. "Whatever she says," Sarah murmured, "we'll face it together." Ethan wanted to believe her, but Margaret's shadow loomed, and he couldn't shake the feeling that her arrival would bring a storm neither of them was ready for. Margaret's car pulled into the driveway on a crisp Saturday morning, the crunch of gravel under tires sounding like a warning. Ethan stood at the window, watching her climb out, her gray hair pulled into a tight bun, her lips a thin line of disapproval. Sarah was upstairs, helping Mia with a school project, while Lucas played in the backyard, oblivious to the tension coiling inside the house. Ethan opened the door, forcing a smile. "Mom, good to see you." Margaret's eyes narrowed, scanning him like she could see the truth etched on his skin. "We'll see about that," she said, brushing past him into the living room. She carried a small suitcase and a Bible, clutching both like weapons. They sat on opposite ends of the couch, the space between them a chasm. Margaret didn't waste time. "I heard from your cousin Ellen," she said, her voice low but cutting. "She says you're leaving Sarah. For a man." Ethan's heart pounded. He'd planned to tell her himself, but Ellen's gossip had beaten him to it. "It's not like that," he said. "I'm not leaving Sarah for anyone. I told her I'm gay, and we're working on co-parenting for the kids." Margaret's face hardened, her fingers tightening around the Bible. "You're abandoning your family, your vows, your faith." "I'm not abandoning anyone," Ethan said, his voice rising. "I'm trying to be honest. For once in my life, I'm being honest." "Honest?" she spat. "You call this honest? Living in sin, tearing apart what God put together." Ethan flinched, her words slicing into old wounds. Growing up, he'd sat through Margaret's sermons at church, her lectures about morality, her warnings about those people who strayed from God's path. He'd spent years hating himself for the feelings he couldn't control, praying them away until his knees ached. "I'm still their father," he said. "I'm still here for them." Margaret leaned forward, her eyes cold. "You think you can just rewrite the rules? You think you can play house with some man and still call yourself a father?" Before Ethan could respond, Sarah appeared in the doorway, her arms crossed. "That's enough, Margaret," she said, her voice firm. "This is our home. You don't get to come in here and judge him." Margaret's gaze flicked to Sarah, softening slightly, but not enough. "I'm trying to save this family," she said. "You deserve better than this, Sarah." Sarah's jaw tightened. "What I deserve is a partner who's honest." We're figuring this out. And we don't need your permission. The room fell silent. The air thick with unspoken history. Margaret had never fully approved of Sarah, always hinting she wasn't traditional enough, too independent for a pastor's daughter-in-law. Now, Sarah's defense of Ethan seemed to catch her off guard. Margaret stood, clutching her Bible. "I'll pray for you both," she said, her tone implying they'd need it. "But this isn't over. Ethan, you can't run from who you're supposed to be." She left the room, her footsteps heavy on the stairs. Ethan sank into the couch, his hands shaking. Sarah sat beside him, not touching but close enough for him to feel her presence. "She's wrong," Sarah said quietly. "You're not running. You're choosing." Ethan nodded, but Margaret's words lingered, a poison seeping into his resolve. He thought of Alex, who'd texted him that morning a simple, "How's it going?" That felt like a lifeline. He hadn't replied yet, unsure how to balance the pull of a new life with the weight of his old one. Over the next few days, Margaret's presence was a storm cloud. She doted on Mia and Lucas, baking cookies and reading Bible stories. But her every glance at Ethan was a rebuke. She left pamphlets on the kitchen counter titles like Healing from Homosexuality and God's Plan for Marriage, each one a silent accusation. Sarah tossed them in the trash without a word. But Ethan felt their sting. One evening, Ethan took the kids to the park, needing air, needing space. Mia, 8 and sharp as a tack, noticed his silence. "Are you and Mommy fighting?" she asked, swinging on the monkey bars. "No, kiddo," Ethan said, forcing a smile. "We're just figuring some things out." Lucas, 5, tugged at his sleeve. "Is Grandma mad at you?" Ethan hesitated. "Grandma's just worried. She loves you guys." Mia frowned, unconvinced. "She looks at you funny." Ethan's chest tightened. He wanted to shield them from this, from Margaret's judgment, from the mess of his truth. But kids saw everything, even when you try to hide it. That night, Ethan found Sarah in the kitchen, staring at a photo of them from their wedding day. "I don't know if I can do this with her here," she said. "She's making it harder." "I'll talk to her," Ethan promised. "I'll make her understand." But deep down, he knew Margaret didn't want to understand. And he couldn't shake the feeling that she was planning something worse than pamphlets, something that could unravel everything he and Sarah were trying to build. The house felt like a pressure cooker, each day with Margaret adding another layer of tension. Ethan tried to keep things normal for Mia and Lucas, driving them to school, helping with homework, tucking them in with stories about dragons and pirates. But Margaret's presence was inescapable, her disapproval a constant hum beneath every interaction. One afternoon, Ethan caught her alone in the living room, flipping through a photo album. She lingered on a picture of Ethan and Sarah's wedding, her finger tracing the edge of Sarah's veil. "You were so happy," she said, almost to herself. "We were," Ethan said, stepping into the room. "We still want to be, in our own way." Margaret closed the album with a snap. "You're throwing it all away," she said. "For what? A lifestyle?" "It's not a lifestyle, Mom. It's who I am." Ethan's voice was steady, but his heart raced. He'd spent years dodging this fight, but there was no avoiding it now. You weren't raised this way, she said, standing. I taught you right from wrong. You're choosing sin. Ethan's hands clenched. I'm choosing to live. To stop pretending. Don't you want me to be happy? Happy. Margaret's voice rose, sharp enough to cut glass. Happiness doesn't come from giving in to temptation. It comes from duty. To God. To your family. Duty. Ethan shot back. I've done my duty. I've tried to be the son you wanted. The husband Sarah needed. I've spent my whole life trying to make you proud. And it's never enough. Margaret's eyes glistened, but her jaw stayed firm. You're breaking your children's hearts. You're breaking mine. The words hit like a punch, but Ethan held her gaze. I'm not breaking anything. I'm trying to build something honest for them. She shook her head, turning away. You'll regret this. Ethan. You'll see what happens when you turn your back on God. Her words hung in the air, a threat disguised as prophecy. Ethan wanted to argue, to make her see him not the son she'd imagined, but the man he was. But she walked out, leaving him with the weight of her disappointment. That evening, Sarah suggested they take the kids to a diner, a break from the suffocating atmosphere at home. As they sat in a vinyl booth, Mia coloring on a placemat and Lucas slurping a milkshake, Sarah reached for Ethan's hand under the table. We're doing okay, right? She asked, her voice soft. Ethan squeezed her hand. Yeah. We're trying. But the moment of peace shattered when Ethan's phone buzzed. A text from Alex. Missed you at the shop today. Everything okay? Ethan's thumb hovered over the screen. He hadn't seen Alex since his confession to Sarah, too tangled in guilt and fear to respond to his messages. But the text stirred a spark of longing, a reminder of the life he was inching toward. Sarah noticed his hesitation. Is that him? She asked, her tone neutral, but her eyes searching. Ethan nodded, swallowing hard. Just checking in. She looked away, focusing on Lucas's milkshake mustache. You should reply, she said after a moment. If he matters to you, don't hide it. Her words were a gift, but they came with a sting. Ethan typed a quick response. Rough week. But I'm okay. Talk soon. And set the phone down, his heart a tangle of gratitude and grief. Back home, Margaret was waiting. She sat at the kitchen table, a stack of papers in front of her. We need to talk, she said, her voice colder than ever. Ethan's stomach dropped. The papers looked official. Legal even. Sarah, standing behind him, tensed. What's this? She asked. Margaret slid the papers across the table. I've spoken to a lawyer, she said. I'm filing for grandparental visitation rights. If you're going to destroy this family, I'll make sure Mia and Lucas are raised properly. Ethan's breath caught. You're trying to take our kids. Not take, Margaret said, her eyes glinting. Protect. Someone has to. Sarah stepped forward, her voice low but fierce. You don't get to decide what's best for our children. We're their parents, not you. Margaret stood, undeterred. You're both lost. I'm doing this for their souls. The room spun. Ethan gripped the table, anger and fear colliding. He'd fought to keep his family together. to redefine it with Sarah. And now his mother was threatening to tear it apart. As Margaret left the kitchen, Sarah grabbed Ethan's arm. "We'll fight this," she said. "Together." Ethan nodded. But inside, he was unraveling. Margaret's move wasn't just a power play, it was a declaration of war. And he wasn't sure he had the strength to win. The lawyer's office smelled of old coffee and paper, a sterile contrast to the chaos in Ethan's mind. He and Sarah sat side by side, their chairs inches apart, but their worlds still raw and fragile. The lawyer, a woman named Karen with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense tone, flipped through Margaret's filing. "She's claiming you're unfit parents," Karen said, her voice calm but heavy. "She's citing moral instability and disruption of the family unit due to your situation." Ethan's jaw clenched. "She's punishing me for being honest." Karen nodded, scribbling notes. "Courts don't usually grant grandparental rights unless there's clear evidence of harm to the children. You're stable. Involved parents. This is a long shot for her." "Then why do I feel like we're already losing?" Sarah asked, her voice tight. Karen leaned forward. "Because she's banking on emotional leverage. She's painting you as a threat to the kids' well-being. We'll need to prove you're not." Ethan's mind raced. Prove he wasn't a threat. He'd spent every day of Mia and Lucas's lives proving he was their father, coaching soccer, bandaging scraped knees, reading bedtime stories. The idea that his truth could be twisted into something harmful made his stomach churn. Back home, they told the kids grandma was staying longer, keeping the legal threat vague. Mia, too perceptive for her own good, asked, "Is she trying to take us away?" "No, sweetheart," Sarah said, pulling her close. "We're your parents. No one's taking you anywhere." But Ethan saw the doubt in Mia's eyes. The same doubt he felt. Margaret's campaign wasn't just about visitation, it was about control. About forcing Ethan back into the box she'd built for him. That night, Ethan slipped out to the coffee shop, needing a break from the house's suffocating air. Alex was behind the counter, his smile fading when he saw Ethan's face. "You look like you've been through a war," Alex said, sliding a latte across the counter. "Feels like it," Ethan admitted, taking the cup. He hesitated, then spilled it all. Sarah, the kids, Margaret's legal threat. Alex listened, his eyes steady. No judgment. "You're doing the right thing," Alex said when Ethan finished. "Living your truth, even when it's messy. That's courage." Ethan wanted to believe him, but courage felt like a luxury he couldn't afford. "What if I lose them?" he asked, voice breaking. Alex reached across the counter, his hand brushing Ethan's. "You won't. You're fighting for them by being you." The touch lingered, electric and terrifying. Ethan pulled back, not because he wanted to, but because the weight of his life, Sarah, the kids, Margaret pressed down too hard. When he got home, Sarah was waiting in the living room, a glass of wine in her hand. "You saw him," she said. Not a question. "Yeah," Ethan said, sitting across from her. "Just talked." Sarah nodded, her eyes distant. "I'm trying to be okay with this, Ethan. I want you to be happy. But it's hard, seeing you move towards something new when I'm still stuck in what we had." Ethan's chest ached. I'm not moving on from you or the kids. I'm just trying to figure out who I am. She took a sip of wine, her hand steady but her voice soft. I know, and I'm proud of you for it. But I'm scared, too. They sat in silence, the space between them filled with unspoken promises. They were allies, but the wounds were still fresh, and Margaret's threat loomed like a storm on the horizon. The next morning, Karen called with an update. Margaret's lawyer is pushing for a hearing next month. She said, she's got a pastor and some church members willing to testify about your unsuitable environment. We need to build a strong case character witnesses. Proof of your involvement with the kids. Ethan felt the walls closing in. He thought of his high school friend, Jamie, who'd come out years ago and offered support when Ethan first told him. He thought of Sarah's sister, Claire, who'd been their rock through this. They could vouch for him. For them. But would it be enough against Margaret's crusade? Sarah took charge, contacting teachers, coaches, neighbors, anyone who could attest to their parenting. Ethan watched her, marveling at her strength, even as he saw the toll it took. She was fighting for their family, for him, despite the pain he'd caused. But Margaret wasn't idle. She started calling relatives, rallying support, painting Ethan as a prodigal son gone astray. One evening, she cornered him in the kitchen. I've got people who'll speak for me, she said. People who know what a real family looks like. Ethan's anger flared. You're not protecting them. You're using them to control me. Margaret's eyes were steel. I'm saving their souls. You'll thank me one day. As she walked away, Ethan's phone buzzed. Another text from Alex. You're stronger than you know. Don't let her win. Ethan clutched the phone, torn between fear and defiance. Margaret's final surprise was coming, and he had to be ready for his kids, for Sarah, for himself. The hearing was 3 weeks away, and the house felt like a battleground. Ethan and Sarah worked tirelessly, gathering letters from Mia's teacher, Lucas's soccer coach, even the librarian who ran the kids' story hour. Each one praised their parenting, their stability, their love. But Ethan couldn't shake the fear that Margaret's allies, her church, her pastor, her version of morality would outweigh their efforts. Margaret kept her distance, staying in the guest room, her presence a silent accusation. She'd stopped leaving pamphlets, but her prayers at dinner grew longer, pointed, filled with references to straying sheep and God's judgment. Mia started eating in her room, claiming she had homework. Lucas clung to Ethan, sensing the tension without understanding it. One night, Ethan found Sarah in the garage, sorting through old boxes, photos, mementos, pieces of their life. I thought I'd feel less angry by now, she said, holding a picture from Lucas's first birthday. But I look at this, and I wonder what I did wrong. You didn't do anything wrong, Ethan said, kneeling beside her. This is on me. I should have told you sooner. Sarah shook her head. It's not just you. It's her. She's turning this into a war, and I hate that we're fighting it. Ethan took the photo, his younger self smiling, unaware of the truth he'd buried. We'll get through this, he said. For them. Sarah met his eyes, her gaze steady. For us, too. We're still a team. Ethan. Her words carried him through the next days. But the strain was relentless. Ethan started meeting Alex more often. Not for romance, but for sanity. They'd sit in the coffee shop's back corner, talking about everything: music, books, the life Ethan might have one day. Alex never pushed, but his presence was a reminder that Ethan's truth wasn't a sin, no matter what Margaret believed. One afternoon, Jamie, Ethan's high school friend, came over. He'd been out since they were teens, facing his own family's rejection. "You're doing the hard part," Jamie said, sipping coffee on the porch. "Living authentically. It's messy, but it's worth it." "Does it ever stop hurting?" Ethan asked. Jamie smiled faintly. "The people who matter come around. The ones who don't, you learn to let them go." Ethan wanted to believe it, but letting go of Margaret felt impossible. She was his mother, the woman who'd raised him, who'd cheered at his games, who'd prayed over him when he was sick. Her love had always come with conditions, but he'd never imagined she'd weaponize it like this. The night before the hearing, Sarah and Ethan sat down with Mia and Lucas. They kept it simple. Grandma wanted to spend more time with them, but they'd always live with Mom and Dad. Mia's eyes narrowed. "She thinks you're bad, doesn't she?" Ethan's heart sank. "She's confused, kiddo. But we love you, and that's what matters." Lucas crawled into Ethan's lap. "You won't leave, right?" "Never," Ethan said, holding him tight. The hearing arrived like a storm breaking. The courtroom was small, sterile. The judge, an older man with a tired expression. Margaret sat across the aisle, flanked by her pastor and 2 church members, their faces grim. Ethan and Sarah sat with Karen, their stack of letters and witnesses ready. Margaret's lawyer went first, painting Ethan as a man who'd abandoned his family for selfish desires. The pastor testified, calling Ethan's coming out a moral failing that endangered the children. Ethan gripped Sarah's hand, his knuckles white. Karen countered, presenting their evidence: the letters, Jamie's testimony about Ethan's character, Claire's account of Sarah's strength. The kids' therapist spoke, emphasizing their stability despite the changes. Ethan watched the judge, searching for a sign of his thoughts, but his face was unreadable. When Ethan took the stand, his voice shook but grew steadier. "I love my kids," he said. "I love Sarah. Coming out doesn't change that. We're building a new kind of family, one based on honesty." Sarah testified next, her voice clear. "Ethan's truth hasn't broken us. It's made us stronger. We're parents, and we're not going anywhere." The judge adjourned for deliberation, leaving Ethan and Sarah in a haze of hope and fear. Margaret didn't look at them, her Bible clutched to her chest. Ethan wanted to reach out, to beg her to see him, but the wall between them was too high. As they left the courtroom, Alex was waiting outside, a quiet show of support. Ethan introduced him to Sarah, the moment awkward but honest. "Thank you," Sarah said to Alex, her voice soft, "for being there for him." Alex nodded, and Ethan felt a flicker of possibility, a future where honesty didn't mean loss. But Margaret's shadow still loomed, and the judge's decision would determine everything. The judge's decision came 2 days later, a letter delivered to Karen's office. Ethan and Sarah sat in her conference room, the envelope unopened between them. Ethan's hands shook as Karen slid it toward them. "Whatever it says," Sarah said, her voice steady. We're in this together. Karen opened the letter, her eyes scanning the page. The court denies Margaret's petition, she said, a small smile breaking through. The judge found no evidence of unfit parenting. You keep full custody. Ethan exhaled, relief crashing over him like a wave. Sarah grabbed his hand, tears spilling down her cheeks. We did it, she whispered. But the victory felt hollow. Margaret's absence at the house that morning was a silent confirmation she left without a word. Her suitcase gone. Her Bible no longer on the nightstand. Ethan had won. But at what cost? They told Mia and Lucas that night, framing it as good news. They'd stay with Mom and Dad. Just as always. Mia hugged them both. But Lucas's question cut deeper. Is Grandma gone forever? No, Ethan said, though he wasn't sure. She just needs time. The days that followed were a fragile kind of normal. Ethan and Sarah refined their co-parenting schedule, splitting time with the kids, finding a rhythm. Sarah started seeing a therapist, working through her grief and anger. Ethan joined a support group for queer parents, a space where he could breathe without judgment. He saw Alex more. Not dates. Not yet. But moments that felt like stepping into sunlight after years in shadow. They'd walk through the park, talking about dreams Ethan had never voiced, traveling, writing, living without fear. Alex's optimism was infectious. But Ethan still carried the weight of Margaret's rejection. One evening, a letter arrived. Margaret's handwriting on the envelope. Ethan's heart sank as he opened it, expecting another lecture. Instead, it was a single page. Her words sharp but trembling. Ethan, I've prayed every day for you to turn back to God. I thought I could save you. Save the children. I see now I've pushed you away. I don't understand your choices. But I love you. I'm staying with Ellen for a while. Maybe one day we can talk. Mom. Ethan read it twice, his throat tight. It wasn't an apology. Not really. But it was more than he'd expected. He showed it to Sarah, who read it silently, then set it down. She's trying, Sarah said, in her own way. Maybe, Ethan said, but the hurt lingered. He wanted his mother's love without conditions, but he wasn't sure she could give it. He tucked the letter away, focusing on the present. Mia's school play was coming up, and Lucas had a soccer game. Ethan and Sarah sat together at both, cheering as a team. Their bond reshaped, but unbroken. One night, Alex invited Ethan to a local art show, a small step toward something new. Ethan hesitated, then agreed, telling Sarah first. She smiled, a little sad but genuine. Go, she said. Be happy. The art show was vibrant, crowded, alive. Ethan felt out of place at first, but Alex's hand on his arm grounded him. They stopped at a painting of a fractured family, figures reaching across a chasm. That's us, Ethan said, half joking. No, Alex said, his voice soft. You're building something new. Not broken, just different. Ethan looked at him, the words sinking in. For the first time, he felt the weight of his truth as a gift, not a burden. He wasn't whole yet, but he was getting there. Back home, Sarah was waiting up, a habit from their married days. Good night, she asked. Yeah, Ethan said, smiling. Really good. She nodded, and they sat in comfortable silence, the kind that comes from surviving a storm together. Margaret's letter lingered in Ethan's mind, a crack in the wall between them. He didn't know if they'd ever rebuild, but he had Sarah, the kids, and a chance to live authentically. For now, that was enough. But a week later, a call from Ellen changed everything. Ethan, she said, her voice tight. Your mom's been talking to a new lawyer. She's not done fighting. Ethan's heart sank. Margaret's final surprise wasn't the letter. It was something bigger, something crueler, and it was coming for them all. Ellen's call left Ethan reeling, the fragile peace he'd built crumbling under the weight of Margaret's persistence. He sat at the kitchen table, staring at the phone, Sarah across from him, her face pale. What does she want now? Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. She's filing an appeal, Ethan said, repeating Ellen's words. She's claiming the judge overlooked spiritual harm to the kids. Sarah's hands clenched into fists. Spiritual harm. She's using her beliefs to tear us apart. Ethan nodded, his mind racing. Margaret's first attempt had failed, but this felt different, more desperate, more vicious. Ellen had warned that Margaret was rallying more support, pulling in distant relatives, even petitioning the church for funds to cover legal costs. We need to tell Karen, Sarah said, already reaching for her phone. We can't let her blindside us. Karen met them the next day, her expression grim. An appeal is a long shot, she said. The judge's ruling was clear. But Margaret's lawyer is framing this as a religious freedom issue, claiming the court dismissed her beliefs. It's a stretch, but it could gain traction if she gets the right judge. Ethan felt sick. She's not doing this for the kids. She's doing it to punish me. Karen's eyes softened. I know. But we'll fight it. You've got a strong case. And you've got each other. The words echoed Sarah's promise. But Ethan couldn't shake the fear that this battle would break them. He thought of Mia and Lucas. Their innocent faces. Their questions about Grandma. How could he explain that their grandmother saw his love as a threat? Sarah took the lead again, organizing their defense, calling witnesses, drafting statements. Ethan marveled at her strength, even as he saw the exhaustion in her eyes. You don't have to do this alone, he told her one night. I'm not, she said, managing a tired smile. We're a team. Remember? But the strain was wearing them down. Mia started having nightmares, waking up crying about losing Daddy. Lucas grew clingy, refusing to let Ethan out of his sight. Ethan's support group helped. But even there, he felt the weight of Margaret's crusade. Alex became his anchor, their meetings a quiet refuge. One evening, they sat on a bench by the river, the city lights reflecting on the water. You're carrying too much, Alex said, his voice gentle. You can't control her. You can only control how you show up. I'm trying, Ethan said, his voice breaking. But what if I lose them? You won't, Alex said, his hand finding Ethan's. You're their dad. No court, no grandmother can change that. Ethan held on, the warmth of Alex's hand a lifeline. He wasn't ready for love, Not yet. But Alex's belief in him was a spark of hope in the darkness. The appeal hearing was set for a month later, and the weeks leading up to it were a blur of preparation. Karen warned that Margaret's new lawyer was aggressive, leaning hard on religious rhetoric. Ethan and Sarah doubled down, gathering more evidence, more voices to prove their family was whole, even if it didn't look like Margaret's ideal. One night, Ethan found a box on the porch. No return address. Inside was a stack of old photos of him as a boy. Margaret smiling beside him, her love unmistakable. A note was tucked inside. "You were my pride. Ethan, come back to us." The words cut deeper than any sermon. He showed the box to Sarah, who sighed. "She's trying to guilt you," she said. "Don't let her." But guilt was a language Ethan knew too well. He spent hours staring at the photos, remembering the mother who'd bandaged his cuts, who'd prayed over him with fierce love. Could he ever reach her without losing himself? The hearing arrived, colder than the first. Margaret sat with her new lawyer, her face unreadable. The courtroom buzzed with her supporters, their whispers like static in Ethan's ears. The judge, younger than the last, listened as Margaret's lawyer argued that Ethan's lifestyle endangered the children's moral upbringing. Karen countered with evidence of Ethan and Sarah's stability, their love, their commitment. Jamie testified again, his voice steady as he spoke of Ethan's courage. Sarah's sister, Claire, described their co-parenting as a model of sacrifice and care. Ethan took the stand, his heart pounding. "I'm not perfect," he said, "but I'm their father. I'd do anything for them. And Sarah and I are building a family where they're loved, no matter what." Sarah's testimony was fierce, her love for their kids a fire that silenced the room. "We're not broken," she said. "We're honest. And that's what our children need." The judge promised a ruling within days. As they left, Margaret's eyes met Ethan's. And for a moment, he saw something regret. Maybe. Or pain. But she turned away, and the moment was gone. The ruling came on a gray morning, the sky heavy with the promise of rain. Karen called Ethan and Sarah to her office, her voice calm but urgent. They sat, hands clasped, as she read the decision. "The appeal is denied," she said. "The court upholds your custody." Margaret's claims were dismissed as insufficient. Sarah let out a sob, her shoulders shaking. Ethan pulled her into a hug, his own tears falling. "It's over," he whispered, though he knew it wasn't. Not really. Margaret was gone when they got home, her room empty, her Bible left behind on the nightstand. Ethan picked it up, its pages worn from years of use. Tucked inside was a photo of him at 10, smiling at a church picnic, Margaret's arm around him. He closed the book, his heart heavy but resolute. They told Mia and Lucas the news. Keeping it light, Grandma wouldn't be visiting for a while, but they were safe with Mom and Dad. Mia hugged them both, her small arms fierce. Lucas asked, "Can we get ice cream?" They laughed, the sound of release, and piled into the car for Sundays. At the ice cream shop, Ethan watched Sarah tease Lucas about his chocolate-smeared face, and Mia's eyes lit up as she told a story about school. This was his family, fractured but whole, redefined by love and honesty. Ethan started seeing Alex more openly, their coffee dates turning into dinners. then walks that lasted hours. Sarah met someone too, a kind, quiet man from her book club. They were careful, both of them, moving slowly, prioritizing the kids. But there was hope in those steps, a future neither had dared imagine. Months later, a letter arrived from Margaret. Ethan hesitated, then opened it. Sarah beside him. Ethan. Sarah. I was wrong to fight you. I thought I was saving the children, but I see now I was hurting them. I'm still learning, still praying. I'd like to see them, if you'll allow it. I want to try. Mom. Ethan's eyes stung. It wasn't everything, but it was a start. He looked at Sarah, who nodded. We'll figure it out, she said. For the kids. They invited Margaret for Christmas. A cautious olive branch. She came, quieter than before, her judgments softened by time. She played with Mia and Lucas, her laughter genuine, though her eyes still held questions when she looked at Ethan. After the kids went to bed, Margaret sat with Ethan and Sarah by the fire. I don't understand you, she said to Ethan, her voice low. But I love you. I love you too, Mom, Ethan said. And for the first time, he felt the words without weight. The night ended with Margaret hugging them both, her embrace tentative but real. She left the next day, promising to call. Ethan didn't know if they'd ever fully heal, but the door was open, just a crack. Years later, Ethan stood at Mia's high school graduation, Alex by his side, Sarah and her husband cheering from the next row. Lucas, now a lanky teenager, waved from the crowd. Margaret was there too, her smile small but present. Ethan had come out to his wife, chosen co-parenting, and faced his mother's cruel surprise. But he'd also found himself his truth, his love, his family. It wasn't the life he'd planned, but it was the one he'd fought for. And it was enough.